Speed vans are predatory.
That's right, I have been a bit of a naughty boy and got caught speeding. Oh dear. But anyway, to preface this video, I just want to say I do not condone speeding in any way, shape or form. However, there are a couple of key facts that I do want to point out in this video. So let's do that, shall we? My name is Tom and you are watching Paragon Cars. Let's go.
Okay, let's do the key facts first, shall we? So the national speed limit on the motorways in the UK came in 1965. Which reminds me, what cars were out in 1965? You know, what was their top speed? And more importantly, what was their braking distances? Well, the most popular car in 1965 was the Austin 1100. And can you guess what the top speed of that car was? It was 78 miles per hour. Now, the national speed limit is 70 miles per hour on motorways. So you were basically doing the top speed of your car back in the day. And the braking distance, whilst they claim wasn't that much further than cars of, you know, modern days like this Renault Capture, it was definitely longer, especially after one stop. The brakes would get hot and the car would take a very long time to stop. And what else didn't you have in cars before the 1970s? In fact, the late 1970s. That's right, it was ABS. And do you know what ABS does? It does this. The car even has the common courtesy to put my hazard lights on for me. But ABS allows you to control your car if you're about to get in an accident. It doesn't just lock the wheels up and stop you from being able to turn. And do you want to know another interesting fact? ABS wasn't even mandatory in cars until 2004 in the UK. And that innovation alone has vastly improved car safety. It stopped people from locking brakes up in the rain. That was a huge problem pre-2004. A lot of people would get brake lock and they would end up just sliding or ploughing straight in to the rear end of traffic. But ABS has stopped that. But then there are two other major things that have really helped car safety. Number one, just the car itself. Cars are now far safer than they ever used to be. If you get in a crash at 40 miles an hour these days, in this, compared to an Austin 1100, the chances are you're going to be fine in this. You know, you might be battered, a little bit bruised, and a bit worse for wear. Whereas if you got in a crash in an Austin 1100, let's just say you probably weren't going home that night. And then the other major point is that tyre technology has improved. So not only do we have ABS, a safer car, we also have vastly superior tyre technology. And we just have faster cars. Cars are faster, better built, more stable. They're just able to do more at a higher speed. And you might say, well, yeah, but the quality of the driver hasn't necessarily increased. And we also want less deaths per capita per year. Cool, I get your point. But our motorway speed limit is 70 miles an hour. And if you look at the rest of Europe, on average, their speed limits are 75 to 80 miles per hour, sometimes even more. If you look at Spain, their speed limit is 75, France is 80, Greece is 80, Italy is 80, and Germany, well, they recommend 80. But anyway, I digress. Back to the main point that speed vans are predatory. Now, in the intro, I mentioned I got caught speeding, and indeed I did. It was last year, but I was caught doing, unfortunately, a pretty high speed of 96 miles per hour. Now again, I don't condone speeding, I think it's wrong, and in the opinion of the law, that was too fast. Now, I will let you guys argue it out in the comments whether 96 miles an hour is too fast for a very sunny, very empty motorway called the A1. But anyway, what makes speed vans predatory? Well, the thing is, I've noticed these days that, you know, they usually hide behind verges and things like that. Absolutely fine by me. But I was driving around Bicester the other day, and there was a road perfectly straight bit of road that went from a 60 to a 40 because there was a junction, and then back into a 60. And you know what? There was a speed van not only hiding behind a hedge there, but they were pointing their camera straight at the sign that went from 60 to 40. And if you drive in the UK, you'll know that when you're going from a speed limit to a lower limit, you absolutely have to be doing the speed of the new speed sign by law, which means you have to be doing 40 miles an hour by the time you hit the 40 mile an hour limit. The problem with that, though, is that in reality, no one does that. In fact, if you do that in London, you will actually get honked at by most drivers. Most people will see a 40 sign and they'll start slowing down, but they'll probably be doing around 50 miles an hour by the time they hit the 40 sign, and then eventually 40, sort of, 100 metres into the actual speed limit. And to me at least, I find that extremely predatory. And you know what? It's not just me. There are hundreds of thousands of people, drivers in the UK, that find speed vans to be not really necessarily looking after the safety of people, but more there to just try and make a quick buck for the tax man. And you know what? I think they're right. I do think speed vans pretty much are purely out there to just make money. If they were genuinely out there for people's safety, they would have average speed cameras set up everywhere, because then you physically couldn't speed anywhere. But the speed van, it's elusive. They don't have to put signs up telling you where they are. They can hide behind verges. They can do pretty much whatever they want and still catch you speeding. And you know what? Time and time again, I see stories online of people getting caught doing 34, 35 miles an hour in a 30 limit by a speed van or someone holding a speed gun. Like, come on, seriously guys, do you really think that extra 4 miles an hour is going to make a huge difference? Do you know what will make a difference is if the driver is actually paying attention to the road, whether they're looking at their phone or faffing around with touchscreens in the latest cars that you are now forced to use instead of a scroll wheel. Time and time again, I will see people sitting on their phones on the motorway. They will be doing all sorts of things instead of actually driving the frickin' car. And you know what else? They're not taught how to drive a car. In a lot of countries, like Norway, you actually have to learn car control before you can actually drive a vehicle legally there. You have to be able to drive in snow. And in the UK, we don't really get taught any of that. In fact, we don't even get taught how to drive on the motorway. During my driving lessons and my driving tests, it was merely mentioned to me that I wasn't supposed to sit in the middle lane. Yet that's kind of the main contributing factor to traffic, people changing lanes aggressively, and inevitably causing accidents. So for me, if I was a political figure, number one, I would just outright ban speed vans. I don't think they're necessary. I think if you want to control people's speeding, put up average speed cameras in zones where it's needed. And don't get me wrong, as much as I hate them, I do think there are certain zones where average speed cameras are definitely needed. Birmingham. But then point two, I think people should be taught how to drive a car, and more importantly, how to handle a car when things do get out of shape. I see so many videos of people online where they'll just mistake the throttle for the brake, which to me is just insane. That should never ever happen if you are a competent driver. That's like the pilot of an aircraft going, "Oh, sorry, I put the thrust to maximum when I should have hit the brake." But then you get the average Sunday driver that mistakes the throttle for the brake and then ends up driving into a bollard and smashing their car into pieces. And what happens to them? Do they get charged with anything? No. They just get a nice big insurance payout. And that is about it. And I know what some people will say. They'll say, "Oh, well, pilots are held to a higher regard because they're in control of more lives." Well, what if that car then went into a nursery and killed a load of children? Yes, the driver would get jail time, but do you think they would actually lose their license forever? I don't think they would, But seriously, something has to change. People need better instructions on how to actually handle a car, and this country just needs to generally stop being so predatory towards drivers. It's just like there's this war against people that like driving and cars. It's absolutely insane to me. Anyway, this week's rant over. I hope you enjoyed this slightly different style of video. If you did, please give it a like, and why not subscribe, as not only can you see more content like this, you can see everything we have for sale, which of course there'll be a link down in the description for. Anyway, my name has been Ranting Tom this week, and you have been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you next week. Cheers.